and 16 of the 2021 GT Cup Championship. Now, before we head out onto the grid for the first of today's races, which will be the sprint race, here's a reminder of what happened in yesterday's pit stop race with Mark Webber.
It was Richard Neary and Paul Bailey that lined up on the front row of the grid for the first pit stop race of the weekend. Richard Neary taking the lead from John Dillon as they worked their way up towards Cops Corner. A little bit of contact further down through the field. As the cars headed round through Maggots and Beckett's for the first time, they were running side by side. There was contact between Carl Caver's Porsche and Simon Orange's Ginetta, which pitched the Ginetta into a roll. That instantly brought out the safety car. Stopping out on circuit to assist his teammate was Russ Lindsay, who got back in his car and was able to continue in the race. As the race got back underway, Ian Humphreys at the wheel of the Group GTB Porsche was coming under enormous pressure from the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini Huracan in the hands of Warren Gilbert. Warren Gilbert would claim the place, work his way through. The Porsche would then come under pressure from another Lamborghini in the hands of James Webb. Richard Marsh had a spin and pitched his Porsche into the pit wall at the start of the Hamilton Straight. That would bring about the safety car just as the pit window opened for the Group GTO, Group GT3 and Group GTC cars. They all headed towards pit lane. The lights went out on the safety car just as the pit window began to open for the cars in Group GTH, Group GTA and Group GTB. So they all followed the safety car into the pit lane as the race got back underway. After all the pit stops had been concluded, it was Ben Dimmock at the wheel of the Radical that had taken up the lead of the race, but Sam Neary, who is now on board the number 88 Team ABBA Mercedes, would go through, take up the lead, and following him through would be the Scotsman, which was Ross Wiley at the wheel of the unique Brabham BT62. Sam Neary coming under increasing pressure from Ross Wiley. He tried to defend, but on the run up the top of the Hanger Straight and in towards Stowe, it would be the Brabham that would go through and pick up the lead of the race. The squabbles continued further down through the pack. The number 9 Lamborghini, now in the hands of Warren Gilbert, was still under attack from the Lamborghini of James Webb. But the first win in the GT Cup Championship overall in the 2021 season would go the way of Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley at the wheel of their Brabham. For today, the number 17 car has been handed over by Russ Lindsay and Patrick Collins for Simon Orange to drive in the race.
You had an eventful race, and also you've had a pretty busy few hours since, haven't you, Simon?
We have, yeah. The car was written off. The 100-yard slide finished that off, I think. So we found a couple of alternative cars last night, which we went and had a look at, but neither were really going to be race prepped, ready for today. So Patrick and Russ have said, because I'm leading the championship, they've said they'll sacrifice today and I can have their car. How very nice of them.
And also, Russ was very, very kind during the race when it was all kicking off.
Yeah, he was a bit of a hero, actually. He'd been tagged earlier on, apparently. So by the time he'd got back on, as he came round, he saw me upside down. And he thought, well, there was no marshals there. He's got a race suit and helmet and gloves. And in case it's set on fire, he's driven over, rushed out and ready to drag me out like a proper hero.
Well, he obviously likes you very much then.
He does, yeah. Well, he's certainly claiming to anyway. He might charge me later, we'll see.
I'm sure he does like you, Simon. He does. And he was a true hero. Really great stuff there. Well, I can tell you we're still waiting for the cars actually to come through onto the grid. But in qualifying, I think I've got this right, Simon qualified third in his group, so he's going to be some way back in the grid. It's a massive grid. In fact, Mark Werrell, who joins us back from his holidays somewhere, Mark Werrell, thanks for joining us this time. Maybe you can confirm that. We've got a huge grid, 40-something cars, is it? 40 cars?
Yeah, well, thanks for the fantastic introduction to start with,
You're
Michelle.
welcome.
I was not on holiday, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. I was working elsewhere, but I'm sorry, you're stuck with me now in GT Cup Championship for the rest of the year, I'm afraid. We had 40 cars yesterday. We have lost a few over the course of yesterday's racing. So the likes of Laki Christoforou is not out. He had a back issue yesterday and under medical advice was advised not to race in the pit stop race yesterday and therefore is not taking part today. Lucky Kieran, his Ferrari had an awful day yesterday. He was never scheduled to be here today. So that's another car that we have lost. But we have gained the likes of Sam Alpass, who was not out yesterday at the wheel of his Jeff Steele Racing BMW. So we've still got, what a healthy, I think it should be 36 cars on the grid. But that will include the Brabham, which I gather, Michelle, could well be starting from the pit lane.
Yes, I've just been informed actually from one of the marshals, and there's sort of a word going out here. Now, what I believe is he might be coming out of the pit lane, doing one lap, then going back into the pit and then starting again, I believe. Maybe you can confirm that one. So yes, you won't actually see the Brabham lining up here on this grid at all. They're just all starting to come through now.
Yeah, I can see the Brabham is indeed out on circuit now. We're getting some pictures of it. So
okay, great. Keep us posted. We've just had the Nearys come through, obviously on pole position for this one in the number 88. Only just about in pole position, though. Is that right, Mark? It was like
it's right, yeah. Qualifying this morning was dry and bright, and the team out of Mercedes qualified just under 2 minutes and 1 second. It was 2 minutes 0.998, but that was only a tenth and a half of a second quicker than Steve Burgess could manage at the wheel of the Radical that will line up alongside. So it was very tight in qualifying, Michelle.
Okay, well, I'm just here with Sam. Let's just have a quick word with him. Sam, how are you feeling about it today?
Yeah, feeling really good. You know, quali went really well from Rich. Finally got the lap out at the last minute, so starting on pole. The Radical's really quick to the left, so I think it'll be a challenger to turn one, but should be a good race.
Good luck. Okay, well, you just heard the buzzer going off, so it's probably about time that I should clear myself from the grid. As I said, Simon Orange, you'll see him a little bit further back. He did qualify third in his group. Don't forget, driving a different car, different coloured car this time, same number. That's right, and it's Mark.
Absolutely, I need to remember that as well. Yeah, so the orange car, as we heard from Simon, is no longer. It was written off yesterday, but what a fantastic team effort, really, and hats off to the teammates in that car for handing it over and allowing the boss to drive it in reality. So yeah, special mentions to Russ Lindsay and Patrick Collins for foregoing racing today and handing the car over to the boss because he leads the championship. But yes, it's going to be dark blue and orange now for Simon Orange, the number 67 car. So there is the grid lined up. There's still a few cars picking their way through. You can just see Godzilla, as it's also known, the Nissan Nismo GTR of Graham Tilley, who shares that car with former British GT4 champion from a few years ago, Will Tregurtha. Will was also a Ginetta Junior champion before he stepped up to the senior categories. That is going to line up behind this car. Now, this is the outside of the front row of the grid. It is multiple Radical champion Steve Burgess, who's moved over from another Championship 2 race in GT Cup. You might have seen that car. It was all black for all the previous races. It's now purple, and also you might notice different livery on the ABBA Racing Mercedes if you weren't with us yesterday. That's because that car there that starts from pole and won a race overall yesterday had an issue and an accident at the Spa-Francorchamps round of the British GT Championship. Now, the car was scheduled to be reshelled at some point, but they had little choice after the accident at Spa. So the reason it's all black is because they've simply not had time to re-livery the car since its Spa accident, and the ABBA Racing team have been working night and day to ensure that that car was able to join us on the grid this weekend. And it's important as well because it does lead the championship overall. Sam and Richard Neary lead the championship on 335 points following the racing that went on yesterday. The number 9 Top Cats Racing Lamborghini of Jensen Lunn and Warren Gilbert, that run in Group GTC, are 22 points adrift on 313. But as the cars head off on the formation lap, let's guide you through the grid and the way that they line up. Tom Webb's struggling to get away by the look of things, but eventually gets going. Let's guide you through the grid then for round 15 of the 2021 GT Cup Championship. It's Sam Neary on pole position, and alongside is Steve Burgess. Row 2 of the grid sees John Dillon line up alongside Graham Tilley. The third row of the grid is going to be Lauren Demise, and alongside is going to be Tom Webb for today. It was James Webb that was driving that car yesterday. And row 4 of the grid sees Warren Gilbert second in the championship lineup alongside Roy Millington. The next row of the grid is Chris Kemp and Andy Stoku at the wheel of their Lamborghini and Ferrari respectively. And then the 6th row of the grid is Nick Phelps and Sam Alpass, who joins us for today. Didn't take part in yesterday's racing. Row 7 of the grid is Tom Barrow, who lines up alongside Morgan Tilbrook, with row 8 being Charlotte Gilbert and the number 16 car, which is going to be Josh Jackson for this particular race. The pros cannot take part, remember, in the sprint races. David Holloway lines up on the inside of row number 9. Alongside him is Tom Rawlings, with Alex Malikin lining up on the inside of row number 10. And for company, he has got the number 212 car. That is going to be Chris Hart for this race. On to the next row of the grid, which is row 11. That is where we will see the car the number 23 car in the hands of Ian Campbell alongside James Guess, with row 12 being Craig Wilkins, and starting the number 44 car will be Steve Ruston. Onto the next row of the grid, that is row number 13. Mike Price lines up alongside Carl Cavers. Mark Hopton at the wheel of the number 77 car has for company Simon Orange at the wheel of that new car for him today, the teammates car that he's taken over as he lines up on the inside or outside of row number 14. Onto row number 15, it is Tim Docker, former Volkswagen Cup racer, that has Sean Winder sitting alongside. The number 118 car that is on row number 16 is going to be started by James Townsend. Alongside is the Aston Martin of Chris Murphy. And then the final few rows of the grid, we are going to see the likes of the number 22 car started by Richard Mason, lining up alongside 34, which is going to be the car. Number 6 that is alongside, which is going to be Nick. Alex Stevenson, rather, at the wheel of the car in 34th position. David Franklin will line up alongside what will be the Brabham of Paul Bailey, but as we hear, that car is highly likely to be starting from the pit lane. It didn't take part in qualifying, having won outright the race yesterday as we saw the pit stop race, but a few little small issues with the Brabham prevented it from qualifying, but it will start from the pit lane. We've got live on board as well this time. This is Simon Orange, so this is the car that he has taken over from his teammates. So Simon Orange now at the wheel of Russ Lindsay and Patrick Collins' car from yesterday, hoping that he can have better fortune than he had in yesterday's race. It was just the lightest of touches. I saw one of the onboard replays from a car further back through the order, and you could have that car-to-car contact, the lightest of contact, 100 times, and you'd never get the same result. It was just a really small amount of contact, but it was enough to, as we saw from the footage, pitch the Ginetta onto its roof, and it just sort of slid for a very long period of time along on its roof. But the car stood up beautifully well to it, albeit it will need significant repair, or as we heard from Simon, written off in reality. But the good thing is that he is okay, and the car stood up well to the impact. So Sam Neary and Steve Burgess, the front row of the grid. It's a GT3 car and a GTO car. Remember, it's the points you claim in your respective groups that are important. So cars from different groups lining up on the front row of the grid, but Sam Neary will be desperate to try and, if he can, make it 3 group wins out of what is now the 3rd race. So round 15 of the GT Cup Championship 2021 is go here at Silverstone. So we get the race underway as they charge their way up towards Copse Corner for the first time. And Sam Neary looks as though he's just about, got the nose ahead. Running very wide is Roy Millington. Andy Stokey at the wheel of his Ferrari all over the grass as well. I think Charlotte Gilbert got tangled up. There's a spin also for Simon Orange with our onboard camera car. And let's have a quick look. Simon Orange trying to get going. And we've got Mike Price at the wheel of his McLaren has got tangled up with the number 23 car, which is Ian Campbell's car, and that car's got damage to the A-pillar on it, which suggests that the car I saw briefly airborne might well have been potentially a car that has also inflicted damage. Also creeping away from the scene is one of the Lamborghinis as well, and off and into the wall, I'm afraid to say. Morgan Tilbrook is off, Andy Stoker is off. Oh, a huge hit also, I'm afraid to say, for Alex Milliken is off. David Holloway is also off, and Charlotte Gilbert has got tangled up as well. So that's 5 cars at the end of the Hanger Straight, all with significant damage, and instantly that brings out the safety car. So we had contact at Copse Corner, but that is several cars all that got tangled up together there, and it was a chain reaction effect, and it wouldn't surprise me if this ultimately is going to be a race stoppage as well, because 5 cars, some of which are heavily damaged. Red flags now coming out on the marshal's post and red lights on the gantry. We are going to have a race stoppage, I'm sure, for this one. There are the red flags. The race has been stopped. Well, it was just one of those things, wasn't it? Didn't quite see exactly what the initial cause of the incident was, but then several cars getting tangled up, and thankfully I think all of the drivers out and okay. You can see the damage that's been inflicted. This was the first incident. This was Copse Corner. Look at the damage to the A-pillar in the window on the number 23 car. Now that means that another car has got airborne and it's briefly climbed up onto that car. Couldn't quite tell which one it was. It may well have been the number 90 car that's parked alongside it, which is Mike Price's Balf Motorsport McLaren. It could well have been another car, because there was another Lamborghini that was limping away from the scene, but that was the first accident. The second accident happened because they went onto the Hanger Straight, and I think the Lamborghini that's limping round may well be John Dillon's car, potentially, with some left rear suspension damage. Let's have a look. That's John Dillon's car that also got tangled up. Now, that is a car that started 3rd on the grid, so something clearly happened to John Dillon. There is what remains of the Aston Martin, I'm afraid to say, the number 15 car of David Holloway. He got tangled up in the incident on the Hangar Straight, but you can see the damage to the front right of that car. It's damage to the left rear of John Dillon's car, but not the start that we really wanted. So the race has been stopped. All of the cars will work their way back around the circuit, ready to line up on the start-finish line. But for our marshals and the recovery services here at Silverstone, then there is a huge amount of work to do. The one good thing is that all of the drivers are out and okay. Everybody would appear to be absolutely fine, albeit some of the cars, I suspect, may well be done for the day. And as we say, it's going to take a while just to clear this one up, because with 2 cars at Copse Corner, 5 cars on the Hangar Straight and up towards Stowe. John Dillon's car also limping round, so that's 7 cars that we need recovering, with John Dillon's limping round. So it's just going to be a while before we're able to get the race restarted, one would have thought. There is Jonathan Palmer leaving the circuit, the CEO of MSV, who operate several circuits around the country, and Silverstone not being one of them. So the car's ready to line up back on the grid, and the front of the grid is as it should be. It's row 2 backwards where we're going to start to see some gaps, and I suspect Michelle will be down there, probably to maybe catch up with 1 or 2 of the drivers, because I do suspect this is going to be a reasonably long stoppage before we are able to get things back underway. Say 7 cars to recover, and whilst everybody is out and okay, some of the cars are still being dealt with by our fantastic Silverstone marshals, who do an absolutely wonderful job. And nobody wants to see multiple car accidents, but when they do happen, the marshals spring into life at an instant and just make sure that the drivers are out of the car, that the ignition switches are killed on the car, that the car is sort of in a neutral position, and if needs be, pushed out of harm's way. But when you've got broken suspension and things, and it just takes a while longer to get all of the cars recovered and sorted. But we do hugely thank all of our marshals. You'll see the little orange heart in the bottom left corner of our screen, and that is in support of our wonderful marshals, who had a difficult weekend a couple of weekends ago at Brands Hatch, and here at Silverstone we thank them significantly, and you can see the work that they are all tasked with on the run up towards Stowe Corner. There is John Dillon's car still limping back, and I've got to say, good work by John, because he's driven back at a pace that hasn't really caused a great deal more damage to that Lamborghini, and it's a fine line. You come back quickly, all you're going to do is, with a punctured tyre, is wreck the carcass of it. The carcass starts to flail and rips the bodywork away, but John is a hugely experienced driver, and he has driven that car back at the correct speed so as not to allow the tyre to disintegrate. So whilst the car is highly likely to maybe not be able to take part in the restart, at least it won't have caused any more damage to the Lamborghini. So the officials will be chatting away to try and establish and understand as to what the process will be for the restart. Of course, it was scheduled to be a 25-minute race, and we'll have to wait and see as to when we can get any sort of restart back underway. But with 7 cars to be recovered, and I think the recovery trucks only now just starting to make their way out, it may well mean 2 trips for some of them as well. I would highly doubt we've got enough recovery trucks with 7 cars to scoop all of the cars up in one go, so I think some of them will be cars moved out of harm's way, get the race back underway, and then do the full recovery as when we get some sort of restart underway. But with the race having been stopped 23 minutes and 44 seconds to go, I suspect we will end up with a shortened race. So Morgan Tilbrook is out of the race. We'll pick up on who is not going to restart in a short while. In the meantime, I think we'll go back down to Michelle, who's there on the grid.
Hiya, yeah, Mark. Well, I'm not exactly quite on the grid yet, because we're not actually being allowed out yet by the marshals. So all the teams and the crews, they're all here at the gate of the grid, ready to head out and obviously check over all the cars who have lined up. But the marshals, you can see them now, all just going through. There's gaps in the grid, obviously, because we've got cars now missing. What a start to our first race of the day, Mark. That was just incredible, watching it unfold. I mean, it was quite something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very, very rare that we get multiple car accidents on the whole, but to have a couple at the first corner and then have the scenes that we saw down at the bottom of the Hangar Straight, you know, it's so unfortunate, isn't it? You know, we've got a capacity grid this weekend. We always tend to have very clean racing in GT Cup, but it's also competitive, and sometimes you end up with more cars looking for the same piece of tarmac, and unfortunately something had to give.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I said, obviously the marshals want to make sure that everything is safe here on the grid before we can head out and have a chat with anybody, but everyone is raring to go. They're having to sort of position and push some of the cars. Don't know if you can quite make it out from here, but it's a little bit of a delicate choreography going on here at the grid at the moment. Just getting all the cars back into their starting positions, really, because obviously race has stopped completely, and so we will be having to start things all over again. Not too sure yet. I'm trying to sort of hear what's going on. I haven't had any sort of intel as to whether we'll do the full 25 minutes. I don't know how, because obviously that's going to impact the racing for the rest of the day here at Silverstone as well, not just GT Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. GT Cup is just one of many championships which are all racing here at Silverstone over the course of this weekend. We've got the likes of the Monoposto Championship, we've got the Radical Challenge Championship and the SR ones as well. The GB3 Championship, that used to be called until a week or so ago, the BRDC British Formula 3, but no longer is it called that. It's now called GB3. We've got MSV Super Cup and the Sevens Series as well. So there's a raft of different championships, all of which need to race over the course of the day. And remember, this is scheduled to be the first of 2 races for the GT Cup. This is the sprint race. We've got the pit stop race a little bit later on. So even though the race has stopped, Michelle, it's amazing to see. You know, the race has stopped, but the work doesn't stop for the teams, does it? We can see them all heading out onto the grid now.
Yep, the teams are all going out now. There's going to be some wheel changes. We can see wheels going out. There's all sorts of things happening. Still cars actually coming through onto the grid as well. And the sun's out here at Silverstone now. And of course, that means that our drivers are going to start getting rather warm inside there. I can see lots of doors being opened to just try and cool themselves down because, yeah, you know, I won't. Actually, do you know what? Let's go. Sam's got his door open. May as well have a word with Sam again. Sam, hiya. So that was an exciting first lap, then, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't really see much. I saw the Lamborghini spinning, and that's about it. And then it went red. So, you know, I missed all the excitement, sadly.
Yeah. And what about the sim? Because you don't normally get that sort of action on the sim, do you?
Well, no. Usually there's no consequences either. So. But no, it's just a big wait now. Hoping to get back out soon, and I've lost all my tyre temperature now, so it's a shame.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that you're just gonna what are you gonna do about that? Are you just gonna try and sort of get it back up to temperature, I guess, in the first lap?
Yeah, unfortunately the Merc struggles to keep tyre temp, so just a lot of weaving, a lot of accelerating and braking, but you're never gonna get it right up there without pushing full on. So the first few laps will be a bit hairy, but we'll see how it goes, have some fun and try and get the win.
That's the attitude. And of course you've got to try and keep yourself cool as well because the sun's, it's pretty warm out here when it comes out, isn't it?
Yeah, it's warm. Luckily, I've got a little fan switch.
So I thought you were going to say you had aircon then.
No aircon, just a good fan. There you go. Happy days.
There you go, good fan. Well, there you go, Sam, ready to go back out again. But as he said, the whole thing with the tyres, that's something, you know, that has to be taken into consideration for him and a lot of the other drivers here as well. Let's just go over to our number 7 as well. Come and say a quick hello to you while we're waiting. So that was all a bit of excitement.
Yeah, it's kicking off in the mirrors behind me, but luckily I managed to escape it all. Yeah. So I got a clean start, but unfortunately I couldn't get by the Abba down the back straight, but we'll have a second go this time.
Well, exactly. You get to have another go. Are you worried about sort of the tyre temperatures and things? Because we were just talking to Sam in the 88 about that.
No, I think we're okay. My temperature's a little bit low then, so I think the extra couple of laps probably do me a favour.
Okay, great. Brilliant. Well, listen, I'll let you get the air in, keep cool, and obviously keep the momentum going, because that's the other thing for the drivers. You know, you've got that adrenaline pumping because you're about to go out and the race has started. Then when it stops so abruptly and suddenly, it's sort of that massive anticlimax. Then you've got to start all over again.
It is. It's a bit like a reboot on a computer, isn't it? Alt Control Delete, and then the driver
Yes.
reboots himself and gets focused again. And it was a really important note that the point that Sam Neary made as well is that you won't see it, but all of these Pirelli slick tyres that all of the cars have in the GT Cup Championship are pre-warmed. So for some of the teams, out the back of the garages, they will have tyre racks, and those tyre racks have thermal covers over them. And what they do is they blast usually gas or diesel, warm air into those thermal ovens in reality, so that when you see the tyres put on the car, they are already preheated. It preheats the rim of the tyre and preheats the tyre, which means the tyres don't go on cold, they go on at a temperature. It's still a lower temperature than what they would build up over the course of a race, but at least it means that the tyres are pre-warmed going onto the cars. And another good thing, Michelle, we've just seen it, John Dillon, who limped his way back round to the pit lane, is back on the grid. That's great to see.
Yeah, he's literally just had to very carefully work his way through the entire grid, because of course he's just here on the second row and just turned up, so that was a little bit of a careful manoeuvring. I tell you what, if parallel parking isn't your thing, you wouldn't want to do what he's just done. He did a very good job, with a little bit of help from his friends, of course.
Racing cars don't have a great deal of lock, do they?
No.
So a fantastic job from John Dillon to squeeze that car in, and also a great job that he did. I mentioned, Michelle, you know, driving a car back to the pit lane with a flat tyre, it's that fine balance between doing it too quickly and then the tyre starts to fall apart and rip the bodywork apart, and doing it too slowly. And John used all of his experience to bring that car back round without causing any more damage to it, and that's the reason he's back on the grid, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I'll just see if I can have a quick word with John now, seeing as the door's open. So is that all right if I just sneak in? John, you're finally back here onto the grid. We were just saying, well done for bringing the car back in like you did with the problem with the tyre.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I had to get it back. I saw the red flag. Obviously, I went out on the formation lap. I could feel something at the front not quite right. The car wasn't stopping to warm the tyre. And, basically went into turn one and it just let go. Yeah. And obviously, I managed to get it back safe and sound and ready to start again.
Yeah, exactly. You get another go, which is a good thing, at least one of the positives that comes from this. Well, listen, I'll let you try and cool yourself down and get yourself pumped up, I guess, to go again.
Great, cheers, thank you.
So thumbs up for John, thank you very much. So yeah, it's starting to sort of take shape. I want to see if we can get any information from anyone here. Let's just have a word. Have we had any information about what's going to be happening with restarting this race yet? No, nothing you can give us?
No. Sorry, no, not heard a thing.
Not heard a thing, so we don't know. We're still a little bit in the dark as to what's happening. Have you heard anything, Mark, at all?
No, nothing at all as yet, Michelle, no. So, I mean, there'll be lots of conversations going on in race control. The officials do a wonderful job, not just out on circuit, the marshals that we can see with the cleaning up and the recovery crews, but in race control there'll be lots of conversations going on. You'll have the championship director for the GT Cup Championship, which is Hannah James, chatting to the MSVR clerks of the course to understand and get updates from the various marshals posts, how long they think. They'll be asking for ETAs from each area to ask, when do you think the circuit will be cleared? They'll be comparing that to the published timetable for this weekend. They'll be having a look through the timetable to see whether there's any slack in there, which means that they might be able to get either a shortened race in here or adjust the timetable for later on. And then we may well find, Michelle, a shorter race, some sort of restart, and maybe this afternoon's racing, a different timetable for it entirely. All of those conversations going on at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, still, all the teams are out here. There's lots of discussions going on out here on the grid as well, I tell you.
I've got another quick question for you. And the Ferrari that is just to your left at the moment, the red Ferrari, front right corner looked as though it had a bit of gaffer tape being put on it.
Oh, yes, gaffer tape. I know a lot about gaffer tape. I had to use some of that for my spoon for my breakfast this morning, didn't I, Mark? Remember? But I think this looks a little bit more technical. What's going on with the gaffering here?
We got a little bit of damage, and this is about all I've got time for. So just need to make sure nothing falls off.
But you know what I really like? It is colour coordinated.
Yeah, well, I'm a professional.
You see, Mark, why wasn't my gaffer tape this morning for my spoon colour coordinated? It was an orange spoon. I had like silver gaff tape all over it. What's that all about?
It was an orange spoon. Quite why you've posed that question to me, I don't know. It needs posing to the production team because they only had silver gaffer tape, I'm afraid. And look at that attention to detail. Even the black parts, Michelle, black gaffer tape.
I know. Yeah, and why is it that my spoon wasn't as good as this?
Because I didn't do it.
Exactly. Did you hear that, Mark? So you've got competition. Next time I know who to come to when I've got spoon issues. Can I win my breakfast?
All I did was miss one race meeting at Alton Park, and that's it. Everything keeps getting thrown back at me. What we can do in the meantime, Michelle, whilst we're waiting for an update from Race Control, we're going to look back at, again, some of the highlights from yesterday's racing.
Lovely.
It was Richard Neary and Paul Bailey that lined up on the front row of the grid for the first pit stop race of the weekend. Richard Neary taking the lead from John Dillon as they worked their way up towards Cops Corner. A little bit of contact further down through the field. As the cars headed round through Maggots and Beckett's for the first time, they were running side by side. There was contact between Carl Caver's Porsche and Simon Orange's Ginetta, which pitched the Ginetta into a roll. That instantly brought out the safety car. Stopping out on circuit to assist his teammate was Russ Lindsay, who got back in his car and was able to continue in the race. As the race got back underway, Ian Humphreys at the wheel of the Group GTB Porsche was coming under enormous pressure from the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini Huracan in the hands of Warren Gilbert. Warren Gilbert would claim the place, work his way through. The Porsche would then come under pressure from another Lamborghini in the hands of James Webb. Richard Marsh had a spin and pitched his Porsche into the pit wall at the start of the Hamilton Straight. That would bring about the safety car just as the pit window opened for the Group GTO, Group GT3 and Group GTC cars. They all headed towards pit lane. The lights went out on the safety car just as the pit window began to open for the cars in Group GTH, Group GTA and Group GTB. So they all followed the safety car into the pit lane as the race got back underway. After all the pit stops had been concluded, it was Ben Dimmock at the wheel of the Radical that had taken up the lead of the race, but Sam Neary, who is now on board the number 88 Team ABBA Mercedes, would go through, take up the lead, and following him through would be the Scotsman, which was Ross Wiley at the wheel of the unique Brabham BT62. Sam Neary coming under increasing pressure from Ross Wiley. He tried to defend, but on the run up the top of the Hanger Straight and in towards Stowe, it would be the Brabham that would go through and pick up the lead of the race. The squabbles continued further down through the pack. The number 9 Lamborghini, now in the hands of Warren Gilbert, was still under attack from the Lamborghini of James Webb. But the first win in the GT Cup Championship overall in the 2021 season would go the way of Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley at the wheel of their Brabham. For today, the number 17 car has been handed over by Russ Lindsay and Patrick Collins for Simon Orange to drive in the race.
You had an eventful race, and also you've had a pretty busy few hours since, haven't you, Simon?
We have, yeah. The car was written off. The 100-yard slide finished that off, I think. So we found a couple of alternative cars last night, which we went and had a look at, but neither were really going to be race prepped, ready for today. So Patrick and Russ have said, because I'm leading the championship, they've said they'll sacrifice today and I can have their car. How very nice of them.
And also, Russ was very, very kind during the race when it was all kicking off.
Yeah, he was a bit of a hero, actually. He'd been tagged earlier on, apparently. So by the time he'd got back on, as he came round, he saw me upside down. And he thought, well, there was no marshals there. He's got a race suit and helmet and gloves. And in case it's set on fire, he's driven over, rushed out and ready to drag me out like a proper hero.
Well, he obviously likes you very much then.
He does, yeah. Well, he's certainly claiming to anyway. He might charge me later, we'll see.
Well, there were your highlights again from the pit stop of yesterday. Unfortunately, folks, we still haven't been able to bring you our first race of the day, which was the sprint race, due to it being stopped during that first lap with a multi-car incident. And as a result, you can see I've walked sort of halfway up the grid. We have got quite a lot of gaps in this grid. There's a massive big space before you then get a few more cars at the end. So it's quite noticeable really what's happened here, Mark. I don't want to go too far down. I was going to try and find Simon Orange, but it's a little bit further back, and I don't want to go too far down there because, of course, if we get a call to clear the grid, I need to be able to get off quite quickly. But yeah, you haven't had any news yet, Mark, I'm assuming, because there's nothing down here yet.
No news as yet. The only thing I can tell you is that Simon Orange's car is actually in the garage. It's not on the grid. So you've saved yourself a walk, Michelle. You've saved yourself a walk. Yeah, I think the gaps on the grid, well, we know that John Dillon is back now on the second row of the grid, but we'll certainly have a gap on the fifth row where we should have had the 133 Ferrari of Andy Stocco. So that will be gone. You should have a gap on the whole of the... What's that? So that's row number 5, 6. Gap on the 7th row of the grid where Morgan Tilbrook's Mercedes will be missing. A gap on the 8th row of the grid where Charlotte Gilbert's Marcos will be missing. A gap on the 9th row of the grid where David Holloway's Aston Martin will be missing. A gap on the 10th row of the grid where Alex Malakin's McLaren will be missing. That is only now just in the process of being recovered onto the flatbed recovery unit. As I suggested, there were more cars than flatbed recovery units available, so it was always going to take a while to clear up this incident, and that car is only just now being hoisted up. There'll be a gap on the 12th row of the grid where the number 23 Greystone GT McLaren of Ian Campbell should be, and then there'll be a gap on what I think will be the 13th row of the grid where the Balfe Motorsport McLaren of Mike Price should be. So I think those are probably the cars that, in the two separate incidents that we have, let's just say, it wasn't one large incident involved 7 cars, it was 2 separate ones that affected all of those cars, and I think every single one of those cars, Michelle, will be out of this race, and for some of them, I'm afraid to say, it's highly likely to be out for the day, isn't it? So we're not likely to see them for the pit stop race later on. So the cars are still being serviced by the mechanics. The one positive thing I can see is on the electronic timing screens that we have, that it is showing 25 minutes in the top right-hand corner. Now, that's not an official notification as yet, but that sort of suggests that we are potentially still going to get the full race duration in. But should there be still a while to tidy up these few remaining cars, if that eats into the timing any further, then it may well be we do end up with a smaller reduction to the amount of time that can really be allocated to the GT Cup Championship, as I say, because it's not just these cars, it's also all the rest of the programme that we need to get through over the course of the day, Michelle.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. I can tell you that the safety car has just come down the centre and is now back in position at the front of the grid. So that's actually a really good sign. That could mean that the race will be underway very, very soon. I'm just standing in front of the number 9, the GTC car, which is, of course, for Jensen Lunn and Warren Gilbert. I think we've got Warren in the car here. How are you doing after, well, our false starts?
Yeah, no, it's a shame really, because we made a pretty good start. We got past the webs, we avoided the carnage, so I think we were up to something like 5th. Yeah, it's a bit of disappointment, but we'll go again and see what we can do.
What is sort of the challenge now of having to restart a race when you've literally only just gone out?
Cooling down. I'm roasting in here. I'm just looking forward to a bit of air coming through the car. Yeah. But it's just got to refocus, forget what happened, because I've got my wife out in the Marcos, which is involved in it somehow. Yeah. I know she's okay, but I don't know what's happened to the car. But just refocus and get back on with it.
Yeah, because that's quite hard when you've got that extra pressure. Like you said, she is okay, but you've still got that slight worry in the back of your mind.
Yeah, the worry is the bill on Monday to repair my car.
And I think we'll leave it there. Listen, good luck, and I hope you manage to cool down. So yes, obviously that adds another element to it, doesn't it, Mark? Because
it does,
Warren has got his wife racing.
It's good to hear that Charlotte's absolutely okay. The journey home could be an interesting one, though, couldn't it?
Might be quite quiet. I just stick the radio on. I think that might be the best thing to do.
No, always good to hear from Warren. A former GT Cup champion. He was the GTB champion back in 2018. He's finished runner-up in the overall championship on a couple of occasions in his group as well. So he's been a regular in the series and is having a great run. Remember, this is a new car for Warren Gilbert and Jensen Lunn. The Lamborghini Super Trofeo spec car lies second in the championship standings overall, just 22 points off the lead. And that's the way to cool your driver down, Michelle, isn't it? Bosch Power Tools is the way to go.
I love it. Do you know what? I need one of those. It's like a permanent wind machine. That would make me look fabulous at all moments.
With your new hairdo as well.
With my new hairdo. There you go. Brilliant. I haven't seen that before. That's actually quite funny. Now, I have just had some intel from somebody here. We could be underway in 5 minutes, apparently. I have just been given the... Excellent. So I believe that means 5 minutes.
Can I reciprocate with some intel as well?
Yes, go on.
20-minute race it's going to be. 20 minutes is the rescheduled amount. So we're going to lose 5 minutes of it, which isn't bad considering the delay we've had.
Yeah, no, agree with you. And hopefully, I'm assuming what they often do is over lunch breaks and things, they try and make a little bit of time up, don't they, throughout the day?
Absolutely. And again, that's worth mentioning again, is that if we squeeze the lunch break, then that means our hard-working marshals don't get much of a lunch break, but that's what they do to ensure that we can all go racing every weekend. They will accept that, and without the marshals, we've mentioned it a few times, Michelle, we had an awful weekend at Brands Hatch a couple of weekends ago, poor Robert Foote losing his life whilst marshalling, and whilst we don't want to dwell on that, I think it's reaffirmed the fact and has brought the family together, and that's why all of the cars have orange hearts on them, and we've got the little bottom corner of the screen. Without them we couldn't go motor racing. That's the be all and end all.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It was tragic, the news out of Brands Hatch the other week. And it is lovely because every single car here is sporting the orange hearts. It's sort of spot the orange hearts, and it's lovely. You can see here on the Neary's number 88, we've got one right here. And it's lovely because every single car is doing it. And they provide such an important service here at the racecourse all the time. And, when the cars just now came back in, we weren't allowed out on the grid. Who was out here? It was the marshals helping to bring the cars back into the grid, making sure everything is safe for us to be able to come out. So, they really do a fantastic job, and we're just incredibly grateful and very lucky to have people that are so dedicated, I think.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And how efficient they are as well. Yes, a multiple car accident, but we've cleaned it up already. We're nearly ready to go racing again already because they are so efficient at what they do. The good thing is that we are going to get the race back underway. It's still going to be a healthy grid as well, Michelle, isn't it? We've lost a few along the way, but it's still going to be, I would suggest, something like probably hovering around 30 cars. We lost a few yesterday for various reasons, more to do with drivers just not being available today. Less so to do with mechanical issues of yesterday, but hopefully some of those cars that we've lost in that race will be back out later on, some of the lighter damaged cars. But even when we get the restart underway, a good grid, still championship points up for grabs, and we've still got a long way to go in the championship, Michelle, at this stage. But the people who have been consistent, the likes of Sam and Richard Neary, and you've just spoken to Warren Gilbert, who shares a Lamborghini with Jensen Lunn, it's staying out of trouble, isn't it? Having a consistent season, picking up the points round after round after round.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, you just mentioned the Nearys. I'm here, and Richard's here at the moment. So how I bet the tyres have cooled right down now.
Yeah, they're very cold. We've just been having a discussion about avoiding curbs because you'll find anyone starts running curbs on their out lap now, they'll get a puncture.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the key.
Yeah, the tyre will pinch the rim and you'll get a puncture. Right. So, you need to stay off curbs for a couple of laps now until you get some heat and some pressure back in the tyre.
Well, hopefully you've heard that it's a 20-minute race this time, have you?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. That makes sense because if you've got your fueling right, you'd actually run out of fuel if you'd fueled it properly.
There you go. So you see there, Mark, there's another really good point. A couple of good tips there from Richard, thank you very much, about the tyres, and then also, of course, with the refuelling.
Yeah, absolutely. Richard's been around motorsport for a good number of years now. The tyres, absolutely. It's so critical to stay off those curbs because the car, of course, loses tyre temperature, which means it loses pressure, which means that the tyre is running a little bit lower than it would do on the sidewall, and therefore, as he suggested, you just run beyond the curb or onto a curb, and particularly off the other side of it, or start to run over the curbs, and it will just pinch the tyre, and all of a sudden you will end up with the puncture. So get the tyres up to temperature, and then you can start to run on the curbs a little bit more. I can see that you are making your way further down through the grid and have found an important man to speak to when it comes to the GT Cup Championship.
Yeah, he's quite important. Are you quite important, Chris Haynes?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Who, me? Little me? No, not at all. I was described yesterday as the go faster stripes of the GT Cup.
Okay, no comment. Listen, this was a bit unfortunate, wasn't it, happening?
Really difficult. These first few laps are always tricky. I'm always reminding the drivers, let's get the first couple of laps under our belts, let the grid settle down, then start racing. But, they're racing drivers, and they get out there and they see a gap and they go for it. The gap closes, stuff happens, and it's really sad. I hate it when I see cars not coming back. But, that's motorsport. We all know, especially in recent weeks, it's a dangerous sport. Yes. So, the drivers have to take responsibility for how they drive, and generally the standards are really good. We can't do enough to reiterate that, and hopefully we'll go out there and the rest of the race will go without any further issues.
Well, and like you were just saying, it is a dangerous sport, but that's why it's so important. If a race needs to be stopped, it is stopped. Things are cleared correctly, and things, the race can start again properly and safely.
Paramount safety, drivers, marshals, we've got to make sure everyone's racing in the safest environment we can do. So, stopping it, red flagging it. 2 minutes to go.
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone will relax and have a good race.
Refocus, Chris. Brilliant. I'll let you crack on. Well, there you go. You just heard it. We've got the 2-minute warning, everybody. So we are able to go racing again for race 1, starting again here at Silverstone, the sprint race. I'm going to hand back over now to Mark, who will just take you through the grid one more time.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, so thank you, Michelle. Good to catch up with a few of the drivers and Chris Haynes down there on the grid. So the cars will very shortly make their way around the track for what, remember, is now a slightly shortened race, scheduled to be 20 minutes. It will be scheduled to be 25 minutes. It is now going to be 20 minutes. I'm just going to have a quick look and see whether there has been a revised grid issued for this one, or whether the gaps are going to remain there on the grid. Let's just have a quick look, and there is no amendment to the grid issue, so let's just remind you of how the grid lined up then. It is going to be Sam Neary who will start from pole position, with Steve Burgess in the Radicals sitting alongside. Row 2 of the grid, John Dillon limped the car back to the pit lane, got a new tyre on it, so he will start alongside the car of Graham Tilley. Row 3 of the grid, that is Lauren Demise, who lines up alongside Tom Webb's Lamborghini. And row 4 of the grid, we spoke to him, Warren Gilbert lines up alongside the gaffer tape repaired Ferrari of Roy Millington. The 5th row of the grid, that's where we'll see the number 96 Lamborghini of Chris Kemp up for the gap alongside where the Andy Stoker Ferrari will not be, I'm afraid to say. All of the 6th row of the grid should be there, which is Nick Phelps in his Porsche alongside the BMW from Jeff Steele Racing of Sam Allpass. After that, row number 7, Tom Barrow should still be there, but Morgan Tilbrook will not be there at the wheel of the Enduro Motorsport Mercedes. He was caught up in the incident, as was Charlotte Gilbert, who will be missing from the 8th row of the grid. Josh Jackson should be there at the wheel of the number 1 McLaren. On to what will be the 9th row of the grid. David Holloway will not take part in this restart, so number 26 Tom Rawlings will be on his own in 18th on the grid. A gap in 19th where Alex Milliken should have been, so it will just be the number 212 car of Chris Hart that will be on that 10th row of the grid. Row 13 of the grid, we will see the number 21 car should be starting on that row of the grid in the hands of Ian Campbell alongside car number 82, which will be James Guess. Then it's Craig Wilkins who lines up alongside Steve Ruston on row number 12. Row 13, we won't see the number 90 Balf Motorsport McLaren out, but we will have Carl Cavers at the wheel of the number 50 Porsche, with Mark Hopton lining up alongside Simon Orange, who had a spin but thankfully didn't get tangled up in the incident on row number 14. Row 15 will be Tim Docker alongside Sean Winder, with row 16 being 118, which will be James Townsend will start alongside Chris Murphy's Aston Martin. After that, we move on to row number 17. That is where we see the 33 car that will line up on the 17th row of the grid. It will be Mason that will start that car. Alongside will be the number 6 Janesha of Alex Stevenson, David Franklin and Paul Bailey will start off the back of the grid again. So the Brabham has got it all to do again yesterday, all to do again today. We saw a spin for Paul Bailey yesterday where he dropped from what was 3rd or 4th down to the very back of the grid and fought his way through to finish 4th in the end. So it'll be interesting to see the progress that the Brabham makes in this one. Is he going to start with the rest of the field, or is he going to start from the pit lane again? That's the big question that we have. So a 20-minute race, less time for everybody to crack on with it, but hopefully we will get a clean start this time through. There's David Franklin's car at the back of the grid, but I cannot see the Brabham there, so I do suspect it may well be another pit lane start for Paul Bailey and the Brabham. They had a couple of small mechanical issues with it in qualifying this morning, which meant that the car actually didn't set a lap time. So it was always going to start off the back of the grid as a result of that, but maybe with whatever those mechanical issues are, they're doing the sensible thing, and rather than starting with the rest of the pack, start from the pit lane, because if the problem persists or happens when the lights go out, then you're out of harm's way. You're just in the pit lane and it can be dealt with appropriately. So the lights are out on the safety car. Everybody is in neat 2x2 order as they head down the Wellington Straight towards Brooklands. So through the left-hander at Brooklands, the sweeping right-hander at Luffield, and then it's up towards Woodcote Corner, and then we will let them loose around the 3.6604 miles of the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. Let's have another go at round 15 of the 2021 GT Cup Championship. And as they head up towards the starting gantry. The lights are on, the lights go out any second now, and we should be away and racing. John Dillon is right up the tailpipes of Sam Neary as they head up towards Copse Corner, but Steve Burgess will sweep the Radical through and up into second position. Runs a little bit wide though, does Steve Burgess on the way out of the corner, but I think everybody is safely through the first corner this time. Sam Neary looking to already sprint away in the lead of the race at the wheel of the Team ABBA Mercedes. They've only done a couple of corners, and look at the gap already that exists between himself and the Radical that's there in second place. John Dillon's Lamborghini in third. As the tail end of the field, the Group GTH and Group GTA cars all file their way through the complex at Beckett's, out of Chapel Curve and onto the Hanger Straight for the first time. John Dillon in third, under pressure from Graham Tilley's Nissan in fourth place. Fifth place is Lauren Demise. It's going to be, by the look of things, Tom Webb that's there in sixth position. So Tom Webb has got himself ahead of Warren Gilbert. We heard from Warren on the start-finish line during the suspension of the race that he'd got the jump on the Webb's BMW, but second time of asking, it's the light blue Lamborghini that lies ahead. Sorry, I think I said BMW there for Tom Webb. That was a couple of seasons ago now when they ran the Beamer. Oh, James Guest launches over the curbs. Tom Rawlings has to run a little bit wide at the wheel of the McLaren as a result. James Guest hangs on to the place, and poor old Tom Rawlings lost out there as one of the Group GTA Ginettas went through. That would have been Chris Hart at the wheel of the Make It Happen Racing Ginetta, who is now having to defend on the run up towards the sweeping corner at Abbey. Still keeps the Paddock Motorsport McLaren behind in the hands of Tom Rawlings. So great squabbles going on all the way down through the field, not least of which in Group GTH and Group GTA, which are the cars towards the tail end of the field, the lesser power cars. But you could argue they are probably two of the most competitive groups that we have, Group GTH and Group GTA in the GT Cup Championship for 2021. But towards the breaking at the end of Brooklands, Warren Gilbert at the wheel of the Lamborghini looking to try and show the nose to Tom Webb. That would be, I think, the lead battle in Group GTC at this stage, those Lamborghinis. There's the repaired Ferrari of Roy Millington that's got Nick Phelps behind, so I think that number 35 Porsche should be the Group GTB leading car in the early stages of this one, but we'll pick up on the group leaders as the race wears on. So lap number 1 completed. Light blue Lamborghini is Tom Webb. That will be leading Group GTC at the moment. Yeah, behind it is another Lamborghini, also running to Super Trofeo specification, which is Warren Gilbert, looking one way, looking the other. The lead of the group is very much up for dispute, but hanging on to the lead of the group and 6th overall still is the light blue Lamborghini of Tom Webb. It was his brother James that was driving the car yesterday, but it's going beautifully well today, and at the moment is leading the group, and as they fight for the final place inside the top 6. So these two Lamborghinis fighting away. Not that far behind them, if they slow each other up, is another Lamborghini. That is also in Group GTC. That was Chris Kemp's car, the number 96 car, so we could have a trio of Lambos before too much longer. Graham Tilley still under pressure for 4th place. Laurent Demise at the wheel of this GT3 Ferrari. It's been a long time Ferrari racer as Laurent Demise. Good to see him back in the GT Cup Championship for the first time in a while. Raced with us at Brands Hatch, what, 2 or 3 years ago was the last time we saw him. But it's good to see him back in what is the first races this car has ever had. Oh, problems, I'm afraid to say, and that's another one of the Greystone McLarens that's got tangled up somewhere. Mark Hopton with the damage to the front and lots of coolant coming out of that car, so he'll be wise to keep his eye on the engine temperatures and, I suspect, park that car up, because if he limps it round to the pit lane, he's not only going to deposit coolant onto the track, but he's also going to see the engine temperatures rise. We go on board the car of Simon Orange that is sitting right behind the Porsche in the hands of David Franklin. Fantastic soundtrack the Ginetta makes as he heads up towards the left-hander, round through Beckett's, and will very shortly propel the car up towards Chapel. Up the inside he goes. Should take the place away from David Franklin. Position gained for the Ginetta of Simon Orange, who, what, less than 24 hours ago was skittering upside down across the tarmac here at Silverstone. Now, Warren Gilbert has lost time on that lap. Just saw the Lamborghini go through. It was running in 7th position, but just saw it head through shot there as though it had lost a raft of places. Paul Bailey's slowly picking up the places as well. Remember, he started off the very back of the grid, Paul Bailey, at the wheel of the number 28 Brabham. Was up to 26th position at the end of the previous lap. And this time, he's up a further 9 places at the wheel of the Brabham. 9 places gained for Paul Bailey. Fantastic stuff. He's now up into 17th place. And I was right about Warren Gilbert. His car lost 8 places on that lap and has now dropped down into 15th position. So the Brabham is only a couple of places behind Warren Gilbert now. Not quite sure what happened to the number 9 Top Cats Racing Lamborghini. Now, Paul Bailey was given driver of the day yesterday for his efforts in both of the races. That sprint through the order, having had the spin at Copse in race number 1 to ultimately finish in 4th position, having restarted the race following the spin in 40th, and also bringing the Brabham BT62 to its first outright win in the GT Cup Championship when he was partnered with Ross Wiley for the pit stop race later on. There is the McLaren. There's all the coolant coming out of the front of it, and understandably the Greystone team suggesting to Mark Hopton to bring the car straight into the garage and into retirement with just under 14 minutes to go. Now, Sam Neary leading the race comfortably by 5 seconds from Steve Burgess. This is the fight for 4th and 5th we're just looking at. The progress of the Brabham continues in the hands of Paul Bailey. There goes Warren Gilbert at the wheel of the number 9 Lamborghini, having lost all of those places on the lap prior. See how many he can pick off again. Paul Bailey diving up the inside of Sam Alpas, who wasn't out with us yesterday at the wheel of his Jeff Steele Racing prepared Beamer. Place gained again for the Brabham. So that now puts the Brabham up to 11th position, I think that will be. So almost inside the top 10 now from what was the very tail end of the field. So another good drive from Paul Bailey. So Paul Bailey's next target will be Tom Barrow's BMW. Yeah, it is Tom that's inside the top 10, the last car inside the top 10. So the charge of the Brabham continues. We go back towards Simon Orange, who is looking to try and thread his way still up through the order. Familiar car, but not the car he usually drives. He's running 4th in the group at the moment, at the wheel of the number 67 car. And has got a bit more work to do if he wants to try and pick up 3rd in the group, because 3rd place in the group is a few places up the road from him. So 13 minutes of the race still remaining. There goes Simon Orange, working his way up towards Woodcut Corner. Now, ahead of him are those two Ginettas. They're the two that he's trying to target there, which will be the cars of Craig Wilkins and the number 118 car, which is the blue and purple car of James Townsend. Now, our race leader has a substantive gap. There goes the Radical. His 3rd place, John Dillon, heading towards us. The best of the fights inside the top 6 is in 4th at the moment. Graham Tilley under enormous pressure. This is also a fight for 7th and 8th place, so this will be Chris Kemp coming under pressure from Roy Millington, who has not a huge amount of experience, Roy Millington. Partnered up with the pro driver Benny Simonson for this weekend. Saw Roy race in a different series at Snetterton a few weeks ago, where he won the race overall. But considering his relative lack of experience, Roy is doing superbly well and is hounding the Group GTC Lamborghini that lies ahead. Now, this would be for position in the group as well. Lamborghini 2nd in Group GTC, the Ferrari 3rd. Number 22 car under pressure from the Group GTB Porsche in the hands of David Frankland, but not yielding at all there was the car of Richard Mason, who claimed his first group win yesterday when he was partnered up with John Lancaster at the wheel of that number 22 McLaren. First group win of the season for them in the pit stop race. 11 minutes of the race still to go. McLaren, Porsche, then Carl Cavers is the Porsche Cayman that sits behind, and Carl locks the wheels heading in towards the braking area for Village. That's not going to do the Pirellis much good at all. Sam Alpas coming under pressure as well. This is the champion from last year, the number 1 car in the hands of Josh Jackson hounding him. Now, Josh Jackson leads Group GTH at the moment. Look in his mirrors, though. Who's there? It's the Aston Martin of James Guess, who is 2nd in the group. So that McLaren can't really afford to be bottled up behind the BMW of Sam Alpas. Sam Alpas is a Group GTB car. It's Group GTH McLaren, Group GTH Aston Martin, and another Group GTH McLaren in the hands of Tom Rawlings, that are all fighting over the podium places in that group. The orange McLaren from the largely white and blue and day-glow Aston Martin, and then the white and red and black McLaren thereafter of Tom Rawlings. So round through Maggots, through the first part of Beckett's, up towards the slightly tighter right-hand aspect of Beckett's, and then get a good launch out of Beckett's through Chapel, which you take flat in these cars. Shift up through the gears as you head onto the hanger straight and try and pick up a toe from somebody. 8th and 9th has not been decided yet. Roy Millington is still sniffing around the Group GTC Lamborghini that lies ahead. This is for 2nd and 3rd in the group, remember. in Group GTC. Group GTC is being led by the light blue Lamborghini of James Webb, who is about 7 seconds up the road from this pair. Nick Phelps coming under pressure as well from the resurgent Warren Gilbert. Warren having lost those 8 places earlier on with some sort of spin or half spin, I would imagine, but the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini is now back inside the top 10 once more, albeit it's going to be, what, 4th in its group. David Franklin is having a good run here. Up the inside he goes, takes the place away from Richard Mason's Greystone McLaren. So that's Group GTB Porsche getting through and ahead of Group GTH McLaren. You can tell the difference of the groups by the corners of the windscreen headers. You can see it's green there for the Radical because that car runs in Group GTO. And that is Steve Burgess, who is lying in 2nd position in this race overall and on potentially for a win in Group GTO. This is the car that is on for the race win overall, which is Sam Neary, who is now 12 seconds to the good and last time through set the fastest lap of the race, 2 minutes 0.518 for Sam Neary, who is a BRDC Rising Star. The British Racing Drivers Club, of course, the owners and the operators of Silverstone. After the Radical, it's this car here, which is John Dillon, who is in 3rd position. John Dillon usually partnered with Phil Quaife, but for this weekend he has British GT racer Phil Keane on board sharing the car for today. He was on his own yesterday. Phil was not available, but Phil Keane joins him for today at least. Now the battle for GTH is still raging. Mid-corner adjustment for the Aston Martin there of James Guest puts him under a little bit more pressure from the number 26 McLaren in the hands of Tom Rawlings, but Tom Rawlings can't do a great deal about it. They are also bottling up behind them now, the black and yellow Ginetta, which leads Group GTA in the hands of Chris Hart. So we've got the Group GTH top 3, then that Ginetta, which is the leading car in Group GTA. 8 minutes of the race still remaining. The fight still continuing out on circuit. The orange McLaren of Josh Jackson seems to have been released from the grasp of the Aston Martin of James Guest, who's now under pressure from Tom Rawlings for 2nd and 3rd in the group. Tom can't quite squeeze his way through as they head up towards Stowe Corner. Is he going to be able to do anything about it on the exit and maybe try and sneak up the inside into the braking area for the Vale? But I think he's going to be just too far back. No, too far away. Sam Neary, another new fastest lap. That's 0.2 of a second quicker than the previous lap that he did. James Guest runs a little bit wide at the wheel of the Aston coming out of club. Is that going to put him under pressure as they head onto the Hamilton straight? It is from Tom Rawlings, but he's still too far away. Now there's the Brabham, and that's ahead of the light blue Lamborghini now. So that now means that up to 6th place now has come Paul Bailey at the wheel of the Brabham. We saw a great drive from him yesterday, as we said in the sprint race. He's almost replicating that here today at the wheel of that glorious looking, wonderful sounding. If you could bottle the sound of a car, I think the Brabham BT62 would be very high up my list of those noises to bottle. It looks quick and it goes quick as well. So Paul Bailey, what's the next target for him now? It will now be Laurent Demius, who with 7 minutes to go is 14 seconds up the road, so I think that might be the progress done. Warren Gilbert trying to sneak up the inside of Roy Millington, and that is going to be a change for position in the group as well. That means that Warren Gilbert now is back into the podium spots in Group GTC. He's now up into 3rd place in Group GTC, and that is going to put him 8th position overall. And well, he could be up to 2nd in Group GTC because the number 9 Lamborghini has ahead of it another Lamborghini, and guess what? That's another one in the same group as well. That is Chris Kemp's car that's going to come under pressure. So Lamborghini from Ferrari, 2nd, 3rd and 4th in Group GTC. 6 minutes to go. The last lap from Warren Gilbert was about 3 seconds quicker than Roy Millington, who was at a similar pace to Chris Kemp. So if Warren Gilbert keeps lapping at 3 seconds quicker than the Lamborghini ahead, he should be through potentially to 2nd in the group, but I think that's as good as it's going to get for him because James Webb is comfortably leading the group at the wheel of the number 113 Lambo. Onto the Wellington straight comes John Dillon. He's sitting there in 3rd place overall. Here's the battle for 4th heading towards us. Graham Tilley with a bit more daylight now between himself and Laurent Demius in the background of the shot. So lap number 7 is about to be completed by John Dillon. He's done well in this race to limp that car back, remember, with its puncture into the pit lane and not cause damage, so that it's now running faultlessly in the restarted 20-minute race. So there is John Dillon. Look to the background. Here comes Graham Tilley. And yeah, Laurent Demise is not quite as close as he was a few laps ago, is he? So Graham Tilley has settled down a bit more into 3rd place in the group, 4th position overall in the race. But if that Ferrari catches him, not just would it be for position, it would be for the final place in the group. Roy Millington has managed to sneak the Ferrari through and ahead of Chris Kemp. Now ahead of them both now is Warren Gilbert. So Warren Gilbert is now up to 2nd in the group. Roy Millington's Ferrari was up to 3rd in the group. And a little bit of smoke coming from the tail end of Chris Kemp's Lamborghini. Maybe he's just watching some temperatures. Could be oil pressure, oil temperature, engine temperature, but certainly that car now not going as quick as it was, and telltale signs of smoke. Rather worrying with 4.5 minutes remaining. Graham Tilley, car number 4 in 4th position. Now there's been a raft of 3rd places overall and 4th places overall for Graham Tilley. Whether it be partnered with Will Tregurtha as he is this weekend, or with Senan Fielding, who he's also shared the car with. But whilst they've had lots of 3rd overalls in the race, they've not had a group win as yet. They've not finished 2nd either as yet, so sort of they are batting about at their average in this race, as is this car here, which has claimed so many group wins over the course of this season. Donington Park, we saw 3 race wins out of 4. We went to Brands Hatch and there was 1 race win out of 2 there. We went to Snetterton and it was a clean sweep from the Nearies at Snetterton. Alton Park last time out, it was a win and a 2nd. Overall, these were, and yesterday we saw an overall win and a 2nd place as well. So unbelievable consistency, really, from Father Richard and son Sam Neary. Now, I think I saw a yellow flag in the background there briefly, so something might have happened at Beckett's corner. We go back to James Webb, who is still lying, 2nd in the group at the wheel of the GTH cars. You see their red windscreen headers. All of these cars comply with GT4 specification. Aston Martin under pressure from McLaren for 2nd and 3rd in the group, albeit this is for 14th and 15th overall in the race. And behind them is still that Group GTA leading Ginetta in the hands of Chris Hart, the Make It Happen Racing Ginetta that sits behind car number 212. Don't think he's overly being held up by the 2 cars ahead, and, well, doesn't matter if he is in some respect, because he is comfortably leading Group GTA at the moment. He runs in 16th position. 2nd in Group GTA is down in 20th place, which is James Townsend, so there's a big old gap between 1st and 2nd in the group. Out of the loop, up towards the flat-out left-hand kink at Aintree. Now this is the Group GTC leading car. Not seen a great deal of Tom Webb. That's largely because he's not really got anybody to play with. He is a fair way adrift of the car ahead of him. He's something like 12 seconds adrift of the car ahead, but he's 17 seconds ahead of the car behind him. So very much a lonely race for Tom Webb. As for Paul Bailey's progress, well, not only is he up to 6th overall, he is still lapping quicker than the cars ahead. He's still 10 seconds behind Laurent Demise at the wheel of the 5th place Ferrari, but with a couple of minutes to go, I suspect that could be it. But either way, back of the grid to 6th is not a bad charge again. Back of the grid to 4th yesterday, probably better, but remember, he had an extra 5 minutes to make that progress yesterday. Shortened race today because of the race stoppage, just 20 minutes rather than the scheduled 25. Well, David Franklin has finally managed to unlock the door and get himself through and ahead of Richard Mason's McLaren. We saw that a few laps ago, but the McLaren's not going away now. He wants the place back. Traffic now is going to be the critical part for the final lap or so. Now this battle that we've got is for 23rd and 24th position. We're side by side at the top of the hangar straight for 2nd and 3rd in Group GTH once more. The number 26 McLaren of Tom Rawlings trying to get the cut back on the exit of the corner, runs side by side with James Guest, but James Guest has the inside line when heading towards the braking area for the Vale. Can the Aston Martin hang on to it? You see the nose of the car dip. James Guest gets the car pitched into the corner. Needs to be careful that he doesn't run wide on the way out. We've seen that a few times, that the Aston Martin just washes out wide, and it has again, and that's put Tom Rawlings all up the inside. James Guest chops across the nose of him. Tom Rawlings takes to the curb. It unsettles the car. Through goes Chris Hart at the wheel of the Group GTA Ginetta. Takes the place away from Rawlings. And they've all got the race leader bearing down on them, who is now just 30 seconds away from the checkered flag, which should come out at the end of this lap for Sam Neary. bit more traffic to deal with, but he's got a 20-second advantage, so really doesn't need to worry about it too much. So certainly looks as though Sam and Richard Neary are on for their 11th overall win of the season so far. There'll be a couple of extra group wins on top of that. Certainly looks as though Steve Burgess at the wheel of the number 7 Radical is on for 2nd overall in the race. That would also be a group win in Group GTO. But for Sam Neary, sweeping his way around the outside of James Guess at Luffield Corner, the Group GT3 Mercedes makes light work of the Group GT4 specification, Group GTH Aston Martin. And for Sam Neary and the Team ABBA team, that's now 11 overall wins of the season in the GT Cup Championship. They were the championship leaders coming into this race, and that is another haul of good championship points here at Silverstone. Wait for the arrival of the Radical in 2nd place. It is just coming out of Cops Corner now, up towards the checkered flag. A spin, though, that is Chris Murphy that's had a rotation at the final stages of the race. The Aston Martin pointing in the wrong direction, I'm afraid to say. So we'll need to get the car hooked up and get it pointing in the right direction. Steve Burgess has already taken the checkered flag. John Dillon's Lamborghini, the number 61 car, should be the next one through. Here it comes now, the blue car with the Dayglow orange flashes to it. So that's John Dillon who finishes in 3rd position. The Nissan in 4th place. Laurent Tabisa's caught up again, hasn't he, at the wheel of the Ferrari, but he's just going to come up too short. And there is the Brabham. He was not far away in the end, was he, Paul Bailey? Oh, what he could have done with a full race duration. The extra 5 minutes of this race could have seen that Brabham potentially climb as high as 4th position as it did yesterday. But either way, another good drive from Paul Bailey and the Brabham. He will complete the top 6. Wait the arrival of James Webb over the start-finish line. He should be in 7th. That would be the winning Group GTC from him. But for Sam Neary, another solid weekend. There is the Group GTC winner. Yep, so James Webb wins Group GTC and finishes in 7th position overall. But for Sam Neary, that is a solid start to the day again for him. Good recovery drive, I've got to say, from that Lamborghini as well. Warren Gilbert, remember, he lost 8 places on one lap, dropped down to 15th. Well, ultimately he finished 8th in the end and 2nd in the group. So it was a good recovery drive from whatever had caused him in the first place to drop his way down through the order. Nick Phelps over the start-finish line, a flash of the lights. That's a Group GTB win for Nick Phelps, so congratulations to him as he comes through and scoops up another group win. That's important for him as well, because he was leading the GT Cup Sprint Championship coming into this one. Separate championships for the Sprint Cup, for the overall championship, and then there is a separate championship as well for the Sporting Challenge. So there's sort of 3 championships within one, and as we say, that's a Porsche of Nick Phelps. A group win for him in a sprint race is important championship points if he wants to try and lift the sprint title at the end of the season. So all of the cars feeding their way back round in towards the pit lane area, and hopefully we can very shortly just confirm some results for you. And of course, remember, we've got another race coming up later on today, a 50-minute pit stop race with a mandatory pit stop in the middle of it. We saw that hugely affect the races yesterday in the pit stops, because we had safety cars just as the pit window opened, so it really did mean that the order was shuffled slightly as a result of subject to where you were on track at any one point, and when the safety car came out and exactly when the pit stop window opened. So into the pit lane come the competitors from the GT Cup Championship. They will park their cars up in their garages, and the teams will instantly be going to work trying to repair and service the cars, ready for our pit stop race a little bit later on this afternoon in what are pretty much perfect conditions here at Silverstone. It's a slight amount of cloud cover. You can see the blue skies. There's been a bit of a breeze all weekend, which perhaps is just affecting some of the straight line speeds of the cars, because you'd be pushing with a tailwind at some parts of the circuit. You'll have the headwind at other parts of the circuit, but either way, weather forecast is suggesting it is going to be a solid weekend. Michelle, I think, is down there in the pit lane, maybe to gauge some reaction from some of the drivers that are down there, and then once we've heard from Michelle, we should be able to pick up on the official results.
Yes, I am down here in the pit lane as the cars start to come back. We got there in the end, thankfully. Of course, it was a slightly shortened race, but nonetheless, we had some really good battles right throughout the grid, which is fantastic. Which car am I? I'm the number 78 car at the moment. I might try and sneak in and just have a word with them in a minute. Try not to get...
That's Tim Docker. I think it's his first weekend
Tim.
with us,
Yeah,
Michelle.
I might try, and he's just having a word with somebody at the moment, but I might try and sneak in and have a word with Tim, just find out how it was, especially after that dramatic start. And who have we got here? Let's see if we can have a quick... I've got James Townsend and Ian Duggan. Let's have a look at the Porsche. Can I just catch you before you run off? How was that in the end for you? Obviously, after the start that we had.
Tricky. There was lots of smoke, lots of debris. Everything was kind of hobbling in front of me, but once the restart happened, it settled down a bit, so it was all right. But,
a lot better.
Yeah, picked our way through, but unfortunately had a little spin at the end there, just trying to get past someone, and cost me a couple of places, but all good fun.
Oh, fantastic, thank you. Well, listen, I think we've actually got the results ready, so Mark, I'll just hand back to you before signing off.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, so let's confirm the results then for round 15 of the championship. Sam Neary claims the win overall and the win in Group GT3. Second, but the win in Group GTO goes away of Steve Burgess. Third was John Dillon with Graham Tilley in fourth, and Lauren Demise finishing in fifth position. Paul Bailey's charge from the tail end of the field netted him sixth in the end, and seventh place was the Group GTC win for Tom Webb. Warren Gilbert recovered to finish in eighth place. Roy Millington was ninth, and the Group GTB win went the way of the driver that completed the top 10. That was Nick Phelps. In 11th place, it was Tom Barrow. The Group GTH win went the way of the car that finished in 12th place, which was Josh Jackson, with James Guess just managing to hang on to second in the group, finishing in 13th position. 14th place was the winner of Group GTA, which was the car of Chris Hart. Tom Rawlings finished in 15th place, with Sam Olpass in 16th place. Steve Rushton, Tim Docker, Simon Orange and Craig Wilkins completed the top 20. Just outside of the top 20, it was Sean Winder, who finished in 21st, ahead of David Franklin in 22nd place. 23rd went the way of Richard Mason, with James Townsend, who we briefly heard from there, finishing in 24th position. Carl Cavers, Alex Stevenson, Chris Murphy finished in 27th place, and I think from there on backwards were cars that had problems, particularly for the number 96 Lamborghini. It was running so strong in the early stages, we saw the smoke, and Chris Kemp had no choice but to bring it into the pit lane late on in the race. So that guides you through the finishers for round 15 of the championship, and we'll hand you back downstairs to Michelle.
Thank you, Mark. And yes, a fantastic overall win. Yet again, I think Mark said it was the 11th for the Nearys, which is superb news for them. Well, that is the first of the races today over with. We are going to be back now. The pit stop race was due to happen at 4:10. Obviously, with what happened, things could change a little bit. They will, of course, try to make some of the time up over the lunch break. The best thing to do will be to keep an eye on all the social media channels in the next few hours. Obviously, we're on Instagram, GT Cup, the Facebook Live, and also if you subscribe to the YouTube as well, you should get your notifications when we go live. So keep an eye on all the socials, and hopefully we will see you back here in a few hours' time for that pit stop race.